is Red, White, and Bluegrass.
Well, from trade wars and tariffs to stock market turmoil and funding fights, there's plenty of controversy surrounding national politics. Kentucky Representative Thomas Massie was the sole Republican to vote against a spending bill this week as Democrats struggled to keep members in line. Meanwhile, more federal layoffs cause controversy and judicial ridicule as the stock market tumbles into correction territory with fears of a recession growing. And the increasing trade war with Canada and the European Union could hit Kentucky. Trump has threatened a 200% tariff on European wine and spirits after the EU announced a 50% tariff on American whiskey in response to Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum. It's drawing criticism from not only Democrats, but Republicans too.
The tariff wars are a big mistake and not good for my state. From bourbon distillers to car manufacturers to the makers of fences to the builders of homes to our farmers. Nobody in Kentucky is coming up to me and say, please put tariffs on things.
We know these tariffs are devastating, and I think the biggest question we're asking right now is, for what? What is the long-term strategy here? They raise our costs at home, and they hurt people in terms of their jobs.
The European Union says tariffs on American whiskey will take effect on April 1st if nothing is done, as American alcohol is being taken off shelves in Canada in response to trade tensions with our northern neighbors there. I asked the same question with our Republican that was on last week when it came to the national economy. I'll throw the same one to you, Trey. How long is too long for folks to really have to wait and see for the president's administration to really kind of turn things around with the economy?
I think that's a good question. I think the Quinnipiac had a poll come out this week that showed Americans overwhelmingly opposed to his dealings with Canada, his dealings with Mexico, opposed to tariffs, opposed to his dealings with Ukraine. I think the polls are already showing Americans turning against some of these policies as the market continues to dip. I think that's where the problem is going to be, because people traditionally have always thought, oh, rich people are invested in the market, but I think about 80% of Americans now have some level of retirement money at some form tied up in the market. I think that's where you're going to start seeing problems. And once the tariffs really do go into effect, if they ever go into effect, because we keep getting it back and forth.
A lot of moving goalposts.
Despite the odd statement of the White House press secretary, they're a tax, and Americans are going to pay more money for every product they buy because of this tax. And so once that starts hitting the pocketbook, just like we saw with the eggs, I think that's where you're really going to see Americans.
It's a completely unnecessary reaction that's completely avoidable, right? When he was inaugurated, the stock market was doing extremely well. Started talking tariffs, the markets got a little iffy, kept talking tariffs, markets got iffy, stopped talking, markets did fine. Now he's all tariffs all the time. And the market's just red. It's red. And there's grumblings on Wall Street, hey, we didn't agree to this when we supported Trump. So I'm curious to see if some, what I call adults in the room, like Jamie Dimon or some people like that, are like, hey, cut this out. Either do it, leave it, or none, pull it. None of this, maybe so, because markets need stability.
And if I'm a company, if I'm going to invest $300 million in building a manufacturing facility, I want to know that the rules that I'm going to be playing by are the same the day that we put the shovel in the ground as they're going to be the day that the doors open on the facility. And right now we can't provide that.
So would beverage-infused cannabis drink makers, but that's for neither here nor there.
Separate piece of policy. Traditional logic would dictate that if Republicans are being put on the defensive when it comes to the press and everything else, that behind the scenes at least there would be some conversations about how do we pivot and change things. With President Trump, this is a very different politician. So is it possible to predict anything from this point?
I think there's two things going on. One, you have an audience of one for a lot of this messaging, which is things are being messaged through the media to Donald Trump. So, you can kind of, Trump's interesting because you can see the internal discussions because they play out on Newsmax and OAN and Fox News and podcasts and radio, because they're playing to an audience of one who is a consumer of mass media. But the other thing is, eventually here, we have midterm elections next year, and these members are going to have to go home. Right now, they can cancel, they're canceling town hall meetings so they don't have to face the public. They're going to have to face the public at the ballot box at some point. And if these policies continue to be a drag come August, September of this year, I think you're going to see Congress come in a lot stronger with a lot firmer hand. And I think probably starting point number one is Rand Paul's bill, which would take the power to levy tariffs out of the White House and into Congress.
We only got about 30 seconds left here. Question for you, Jared, as we wrap up. How much negotiating power would you say that Democrats have right now on the national stage? Even though they're in the minority, it seems like they need a lot of numbers.
So this is before we find out the results of the CR. Right now, as we tape this, Democrats have power. They can not vote for cloture on the CR in the Senate, show some backbone for once in their lives, and tell the Republicans that own the White House, that own the House, that own the Senate, to fix their mess. I hope they prove me wrong. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to cave.
And by the time y'all are watching on Sunday morning, we'll certainly know. Well, thank you both for your insight. We'll be right back.